Hey guys, Comet here. Now, I know it's been a while since I've made a video. I've been kind of busy with work and stuff. Just never really had any ideas for good content. But that has changed. Everyone tries to avoid mouth breather and bottomless stomach, but I want to see what happens or how far I can get if I just fully embrace that. I want to force both mouth breather and bottomless stomach onto every duplicant I take. So the main premise of this series will be very needy duplicants. Bottomless stomach causes your duplicants to eat 50% more calories, and mouth breather causes your duplicants to breathe twice as much oxygen. And this first video is, I'll probably call it like episode 0 or something. I'm just gonna maybe take 5 minutes or so, explain the premise, show the duplicants I want to take, and some of the features I want to put on the starting asteroid. And I do have all of the DLCs. I'm not going to be playing on Spaced Out. I actually don't really like the Spaced Out DLC, but I have the Frosty Planet, Bionic Booster Pack, and the Prehistoric Planet Pack. So I'll be sprinkling in those traits on a base asteroid. And then episode 1 will probably be like where we actually get into the gameplay. And there are some mods I will be using to make this a lot easier. Just 2 aesthetic ones here: drywall hides pipes and clean floors. Chain deconstruct, I'm pretty sure everyone has that. It was kind of like the pliers mod back when this game was first starting out. But the pliers mod is now part of the game anyway, so I don't need that mod anymore. But these are the big 2 right here. So the duplicant stat selector will let you fully customize all duplicants and really anything the printing pod makes. And you can abuse this, make incredibly overpowered duplicants, but I'm going to try and keep them pretty balanced, given the rules of the duplicant generation. And then this one, the cluster generation manager, just gives you more control over the asteroid and what spawns on it, geysers and stuff. So I'll go over all of the settings I'm going to be using. Let's get to new game, survival, standard. And we're not going to do the Terra Asteroid or the 2 DLCs. I've done Rime a few times. It's actually my favorite map. But I want to try something the exact opposite. I have played on Oasis before. I just really don't like how oil generates on Oasis. It's kind of spread out across different layers. I like it when it's all focused at the bottom. And the main way to play on Oasis is just kind of box yourself in and then you're okay. The starting biome is cool enough to grow plants just fine, but Iridio is not. Everything starts just warm enough to not grow any mealwood. So I think this would provide some interesting gameplay. Now with the cluster generation mod, you have this new icon here, brings you to this screen, where you have a lot of control over what actually spawns on your asteroid. So I can change the size here. I like to play on a larger asteroid, and even the shape. Let's do slightly wider. And then this needs to be divisible by 4 because of bunker doors at the top, so let's do 348. There we go. I don't like alternate pod or large boulders. I'm going to be doing trapped oil. I want to force it all to spawn at the bottom. It's just way more convenient. And the oil generation on Iridio is pretty standard, like the Terra Asteroid. You don't really have the irregular oil patches anyway. And these can actually be overlapped, so you have oil spawning both at the bottom and the top, if you really want to go crazy with oil. But I'm not gonna play with that one. I also like Geoactive. Because it's a larger map, the number of geysers stays the same, but as the map expands, the geysers just kind of get further apart. So to compensate for that, I'm gonna put in more geysers. Vanilla meteor showers is fine. And this is really cool. You can blacklist certain geysers, and I freaking hate the leaky oil fisher. I think it is the worst geyser in the game. So I'm going to disable that completely, and then I do like to build a lot of stuff, so I'm gonna enable or force generate at least one of each of these volcanoes, so I have a renewable source of metal. I mean, it's not a great source, but at least it is a source. And because I'll be requiring so much oxygen, I'm going to just make sure I have at least one of all of these water geysers. Oh, and I almost forgot metal rich. Yeah, that's important too. I have all of the DLCs enabled here. I want to make it so that these are kind of just sprinkled in, but not forced to generate. I want to be able to kind of do everything on this map at some point eventually in the series. Not necessarily have access to, an ice biome right away. That would be overpowered. So I'm just going to do likely. Some of these might not even spawn at all. For game settings, I think the disease on the base setting is just way too easy. So we're going to max that out. We're already having hungry duplicants, so I'm not going to touch hunger. Morale, let's bump that up. Durability. Now this one, I always have mixed feelings about this. All this changes is the quantity of reed fiber needed for atmosuits. It doesn't change the gating mechanism for atmosuits. Like, once you get reed fiber, you have atmosuits. It's just how much reed fiber you want to make. And I suppose that's also true for food. I don't know, there's just something... I don't feel like this adds much to the game to change. But to stay in the spirit of difficult, I will reluctantly change this to threadbare. Now, the initial atmosuits will require reed fiber and refined metal, but to repair them is just reed fiber. If it required refined metal, then I would not be touching this. Meteor showers, gonna leave that on default. Now, something interesting that the wiki points out, spring showers and cosmic storm are actually the same. There's no difference between the ostensibly easier difficulty and the harder difficulty. Doomsday, this can pair really well with Rock Fan if you take that on your duplicants, because you just have a constant bombardment, but it also reduces the amount of material you get from meteors by 50%, meaning you close your bunker doors twice as often to only get 50% more material, which doesn't seem like a good deal to me, even if you are running Rock Fan duplicants for the bonuses. So I'm going to leave that on default. Stress, we can bump that up to frankly depressing, and I'll leave these other things the same here. Now for story traits, I eventually want to have one of every unique duplicant, at least the default ones. I might take bionic duplicants later, we'll see. I have the DLC enabled just in case I do decide I want to do that later. But I'm going to disable everything except for the Mysterious Hermit. That way we can get George. The Somnium Synthesizer is... you have to put a lot of work into it to get it to work. This is kind of okay. I've never really found a good use for biobots. And the Ancient Specimen, I just don't like that it spawns stuff potentially in the way of places I want to build. And really, it just lets you trade diamond for fossil, which doesn't really seem like a good trade for me anyway. And then the last thing this mod lets you do is add missing points of interest to the star map. That way, if there's like a seed or something, I know I played a map without any rust biomes, and I wanted to get into Dash of Salt Vines, but I didn't have the Salty Dwarf planet in my star map, so I couldn't get any salt vine seeds. So I was just kind of locked out of that, and it was kind of frustrating. And I couldn't even get it from the printing pod because I had never seen it on the map yet, so I never had access to it. So I want to be able to have access to everything eventually, even if it takes, all rocket tree infrastructure to get it, just as long as I know I have access to it eventually. Alright, and these are the settings I'll be playing on. I'll just re-roll the seed here a few times. And I will start this. We can pick the duplicants. I'll go over the traits I want, and then that'll probably be the end of this episode. We won't get into the game until episode 1. Okay, so the duplicant selector mod gives you some cool things you can do here. You can start with more duplicants. You can start with less duplicants if you want. I'm going to do the base 3. Instead of just randomly re-rolling, you can force standard duplicants, or bionic if you want to take bionic duplicants. You can re-roll with a specific positive trait. So let's say I want handy for some reason. These will always have handy. Or you can literally just pick and choose exactly what you want. So I like to start with a digger, a builder, and a researcher. Now my digger, I want to force mole hands on. My builder will have handy, and my researcher can have quick learner. And then I can reroll these as many times as I want until I get traits I'm looking for. Or, I could just come in and force these on them, which is kind of the whole point here. So, bottomless stomach and mouth breather. Then, just to make germs a little more impactful, I'll also give them biohazardous. Now you can see this gives the duplicant a balance rating of -8. So all of these negative traits, or if I get rid of mole hands here, add up to -11. So bottomless stomach is epic. That'll give a -4. Biohazardous is uncommon, so -2. And mouth breather, the worst trait in the game, gives a -5. So to offset that, I'll be allowing mole hands. Brings us up to 8. Then the best generic trait to give your duplicants, well, the best generic trait is diver's lungs, but that would kind of defeat the whole purpose of this series, so we're going to avoid that. The next best is probably twinkle toes. This gives a +3 to athletics. That allows your duplicants to run 30% faster, and since the majority of their time is spent running between tasks, not necessarily doing tasks, this is a really good trait to have. And we're still at -4, so let's give this duplicant buff. That's -1. So this could theoretically generate from the printing pod. You can't actually get it on your starting duplicants. Starting duplicants always only have 1 positive and 1 negative. But once you start printing duplicants, this is something that could theoretically generate. The game tries to balance duplicants around 0. Sometimes there's always variance, so sometimes you will get a duplicant that's a little better, a little worse. And then for interests, I always like to take triple interest dupes. They just have inherently more morale by the end of the game. So my digger obviously is going to have digging, not cooking, but supplying, that's probably the next best interest just generally to give your duplicants, because the supplying tech that you can skill them into gives way more carrying capacity than just the learned skills that they accumulate through gaining experience. So you almost always want to tech them into supplying anyway, so I'll take the free morale by just making this duplicant interested in it. And then the last thing, probably suit wearing, because they're all going to be in Atmo suits eventually. And you could go crazy with this mod, just make them interested in literally everything, but we're not going to do that. I want something that's theoretically possible to get from the printing pod, or just generally balanced. So where do these +6, +4, +4 bonuses come from? Those actually come from the negative traits. So bottomless stomach, you can see interest bonus 4, mouth breather interest bonus 5. those are points that can be allocated to any of the interests. And these points go to the learnable levels. They don't affect the cap. The skill cap is affected by these positive traits. So buff will allow a duplicant to go up to the initial 20 learned skills and then plus 3. So this duplicant would max out at 23 strength. And same for Twinkle Toes, they would max out at 23 athletics instead of just the 20 from learning skills. So negative traits increase the initial skills, but they don't help increase the cap. So by the end of the game, these initial bonuses from the negative traits actually become irrelevant. But I'm going to reallocate these into digging. Want really good digger. Now for my builder, building, supplying, and operating. You almost always have to put operating on your builder just so that they can build the conveyor rails and stuff like that. And in order to get mechatronics engineering, which is the last skill of operating, you have to go through supplying anyway. So there's no room to give this duplicant the suit wearing interest, which is okay, that's fine. That means this duplicant can also have a secondary skill of operating. So my builders can build and operate. So they don't just need handy, they also need grease monkey. Then I'll assign the negative traits and see where our balance is here. -7. So we need to give them a few more positive traits to balance them out. Twinkle Toes and buff. And now they're perfectly balanced. I will reallocate some of these points to building and operating. And that looks like a good builder. And I don't think I'm going to take a Catalina. I think I'll do a Nisbet instead. My digger is almost always a stinky. There we go. Now for my researcher, they already have bottomless stomach, that's convenient. Let's do biohazardous and mouth breather. Let's give them some offsetting positive traits. They're sitting at -1, that's acceptable. Then for interests, researching, obviously, supplying, and I could do suit wearing or operating. I think maybe early on, suit wearing is probably just a little better because of the athletic points. But if you're just trying to roll for a duplicant and you see one that has researching, suit wearing, and supplying, and you're not using the mod, then that's perfectly fine for your researcher. So I'll reallocate these to researching. There we go. And I didn't mean for all of them to be redheads, but that's kind of funny. So these are the dupes we're going to take. Re-roll the name here a few times, try and find something interesting. How about the coughing laboratory? I have a feeling they're going to be getting sick a lot, so that might be appropriate. Alright, I will hit embark and catch you in the next episode.